This time we're going to go a little bit more in depth into types of spatialization. You'll notice we're not talking about types of silence. Well, that's because there's really only one. But there are many, many, many types of spatialization beyond just mono. Bit of a preface here. This is just going to be an overview. I will be demoing how to do all of these techniques in class, as they involve a lot of DAW work. So make sure you are in your chair with webcams turned on for class. You are going to have to download some stuff and have it installed beforehand, though. So for everybody, I have a PDF up called Using Multichannel and Ambisonics on the course page. Grab that, look it over. You only have to look over the parts that are specific to your particular DAW. For Ableton, you will need to have Ableton Suite version, not Intro, not Standard. It must be Suite because only the Suite version has Max for Live. You will also need the Surround Panner. That's a Max for Live device that comes with Ableton Suite. And you will need to go out and download Envelop. It's a set of tools for Max for Live Ambisonics. You might be wondering why I'm not using the Max for Live audio routes device. That's very simple because it doesn't give you binaural output or recording support, and we're going to need both. Logic Pro users, you're going to be using the built-in binaural and surround devices. You do not have to download anything else. Reaper users, you will need both the built-in resurround device and the Ambisonic toolkit, which you can download and install pretty easily. So, types of spatialization. There is mono. Single file is output that contains all of the signal in one channel. Everything is effectively down the middle. Why would you do this? Well, it's actually really good for checking for phase issues in a mix or for exporting individual sound files for further use somewhere else, like sound effects, Foley cues, noises you're going to use in a game. But it is not appropriate for music because we've got two ears and we like to hear things in both of them. Instead, for that, you want stereo, which is the default two channels, left and right, that is standard for almost all commercial music recordings. This gives you a 180-degree sound field that covers just a little bit more than the angle of the human ears. Keep in mind with the pinna on your ears that kind of compresses a little bit, so our hearing range is a little bit focused to the front. It's not a whole 180, it's more like 176 degrees. This is a great default mode to work in and allows the illusion of depth through the use of volume and reverb to push things front and back. Also, this is enough that you can place an entire orchestra's worth of instruments within the 180 degrees of the sound field and have a place for every single instrument. But that might not be enough. For those times, we've got multi-channel, which is anything more than two speakers and allows for a more refined positioning. So in acousmatic music, it's common to work in quadraphonic and octaphonic. 4 speakers arranged around the listener, or 8 speakers arranged around the listener. But in film and game, which we will be looking at, it's primarily going to be in 5.1 surround, where you have 2 speakers on the left, 1 in the front, 1 in the back, 2 on the right, 1 in the back, and 1 in the center, and 7.1, where you have 3 left front, left middle, left back, right front, right middle, right back, center, and in both cases, the 0.1 is a low frequency emitter that's handling all the audio below around 40 hertz. Typically, this is a mono channel that's going directly to the subwoofer, and the placement does not matter because, again, your hearing can't really localize frequencies that low. So be aware as you're setting things up, and we'll go over this in class, that technically a 5.1 mix is going to have 6 channels, and a 7.1 is going to have 8 channels. The other type that we're going to look at in a very, very compressed version is Ambisonics. Ambisonics creates a full sphere surround sound where the listener is encased inside of the sound field and can hear and localize the position of a sound within that 360-degree sphere. It's essentially a 3D extension of mid-side stereo recording that adds additional channels for height and depth. And it comes in two formats that we're going to be looking at primarily. There is the A format, where a signal is recorded using either a mono signal or a special ambisonic mic. And it uses on the mic a tetrahedral array W, X, Y, and Z, where W is an omnicapsule that is recording sound pressure and just generally everything, and X, Y, and Z are individual figure 8 capsules along their respective 3D axis. The raw output of this mic is the A format, 4 channels, and needs to be converted to B format for us to work with. B format can take a signal of any type that has been encoded into B format and lets us work with it. So the signals are processed using an encoder. This aligns the audio into a 4-channel array that allows us to perfectly position that signal in 3D space by adjusting the volume of those channels. The encoder then passes these channels to transformers that allow us to further position the sound. And the transformers finally send that audio to a decoder to render it into a playback format corresponding to the user's setup. Note that I did not say it is a specific playback format. You can use B format and then send it to a decoder for mono, stereo, 5.1, 7.1, octaphonic, binaural, different Ambisonics formats. It is really, really cool. And once we get into class, you're going to see this in action and it's going to blow a couple of minds. There are other types of Ambisonics. There are things like first order Ambisonics or FOA, which uses the standard 4-channel format and which is what we're going to be using in Reaper with ATK. There is third order Ambisonics, which expands this up to 16 channels, allowing for further refinement to the positioning and transformation potential. It's much more accurate, but at the expense of a much, much higher CPU and DSP usage. Then there is higher order Ambisonics, which goes even further beyond 16 channels. But beyond first order, they no longer correspond to standard microphone polar patterns and require a huge number of specialized mics to record and even more speakers to play back. So unfortunately, we will not be exploring those in class. And then again, B format Ambisonics can be decoded to any other format. This is where everything gets really popular and really, really powerful when you're using these to transform and localize sounds and create just awesome, awesome placement. But we are going to focus most of our work in class on binaural audio. A couple of reasons. That is available in all 3 DAWs, and it is best listened to through headphones, which we all have. The way that binaural audio works is that it uses a head-related transfer function to position a signal while taking into account the different times between hearing a signal in one ear versus the other and the pitch differential between the ears as well. If you hear a signal really close to one ear, the pitch you hear in the other ear will be slightly different. Binaural audio also lets you really accentuate the pitch and volume changes because of the Doppler effect. This is a change of frequency in a sound in relation to the proximity to the listener. It's like when you hear a car go by and the pitch changes and then changes again as it gets further and further away. It's really cool. Using the different head-related transfer functions, you can find a bunch of those online. There's a bunch built into ATK and Reaper, and you can use those to program different head sizes. And doing that, it will make you really feel in the sound when you're using the headphones. This is really, really recommended, especially because it's becoming more prominent in game audio, especially in conjunction with VR headsets. And if you have yet to experience that, find someone you know who's got an Oculus and just convince them to let you take it out for a spin. It is amazing. There are some pluses and minuses to Ambisonics. On the plus side, it's an open standard. It's not copyrighted like Dolby Atmos or THX or any stuff like that. Once a signal is encoded in Ambisonics, it can be translated to any other format during the decoding process. It gives you a great sense of spatial positioning and localization of sounds, which you will very soon see when we start doing this in class. And there is a lot of interest recently in the format, even though it's been around for nearly 50 years. It was developed in the 70s. A lot of this is due to VR and 360-degree filming. So there's some great examples of that up on YouTube, where you can actually pan stuff around and it will change what you hear in relation to where things are panned. We'll look at a couple of those. There are some minuses, though. Mics that record in ambisonic format, this is going to be in the A format, are expensive. The Rode SF1 starts at $1,000 and they just go up from there. Hardware decoding is even more expensive for recorders that will record in Ambisonics. There are some from Zoom that are reasonable, but if you really want to do it well, you need something like a Sound Devices recorder, and those are not cheap. Playback devices that will decode are even more expensive. Another big one, very little audio is released in Ambisonics format. One exception, Nimbus Records, which records and releases classical music exclusively in the Ambisonic UHJ stereo format, and it sounds amazing. And also, the biggest minus is that Ambisonics adds a layer of complexity just to use basic first order, and it requires a decent amount of math for anything above that. So that part, not so great.